one of the really important things coming off an abusive relationship is don't get involved with someone right away.
Welcome to the Audacious Life Podcast, where your host, Stephanie Roberts, welcomes you to listen to women from all walks of life share their stories of finding freedom from abuse. You'll hear experts give you real advice on what you need to do to create hope for your future. Make a plan and see that light at the end of the tunnel. You'll learn how to build yourself up spiritually, mentally, physically, financially, and legally. 1 in 4 women have experienced some form of abuse, and 80% of women who leave abusive relationships go back. It's time to change that statistic and give you the audacious life you've always wanted. A life of freedom, peace, and true joy. Put on your headphones and get ready to be inspired.
Just want to thank you for tuning in today. If you're a new listener, welcome. Happy to have you here. If you like what you're listening to, please do, if you're listening in iTunes, leave us a rating and review, and subscribe if you want to become a regular listener. That helps us tremendously, and it will help keep this podcast afloat. If you're listening in Stitcher, you can also give us a review and leave a rating, and that would help as well. Thanks again. Welcome to the Audacious Life Podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Roberts. Today we have an incredible interview. This one is with Lundy Bancroft. I'll read his intro and bio coming up soon. Let's just say he knows what he's talking about when it comes to men and abuse, and he was able to cover a lot of territory in a short period of time, so you will not be let down. And the questions that I asked him actually came from you, the listeners, and friends in our public forum and our private group and some other groups that I'm in. So I just think that it makes these kinds of conversations that much more valuable. So please, if you're not on my email list, go to theaudaciouslife.com and sign up. If you want to join the Facebook group, you can look for the Audacious Life closed group. There's also a fan page if you just want to contribute comments there. That would be great. So without further ado, here is the show with Lundy Bancroft. Thanks for listening. Today we are fortunate to have some time with Lundy Bancroft. Lundy has spent the last 25 years of his career specializing in the tactics of abusive men and their impact on women and children. He's the author of 4 books in the field, including Why Does He Do That?, the nation's largest selling book on domestic abuse, When Dad Hurts Mom, and co-author of Should I Stay or Should I Go? He has also written over a dozen articles and professional publications, and he's the former co-director of Emerge, the nation's first program for abusive men, and he is now national trainer and public speaker for nonprofit, governmental, and judicial agencies on dealing with domestic abuse situations. Lundy also leads weekend healing retreats for women who have escaped destructive relationships. And I understand that retreat is not so easy to get into, but just want to welcome Lundy. So Lundy, tell us about your new book that you have.
Sure. So my book came out about a month ago. It's called Daily Wisdom for Why Does He Do That? And it's a companion to a book that came out about 10 years ago called Why Does He Do That? That I wrote, that was an explanation of where abusive behavior by males in relationships comes from. And it was essentially, my goal with Why Does He Do That was just to help women stay out of the most common traps, psychological traps that abusers create. Abusers are just very skilled at getting the woman to believe that it's her own fault, getting her to believe that she can solve the problem if she can just make him happier and just figure out what he needs and why he gets so bothered. And abusers also tend to get the woman very isolated, get her feeling very alone and cut off from friends and family and coworkers and other people she cares about. So I tried to give some warnings and some strategies about the dangers of getting isolated and some of the ways to get out of isolation. And then women also struggle so much with dealing with how abusers promise that they're going to change, and trying to figure out, well, how do I know whether he's actually changing or not, and whether he really means it. So then the new book is a year's worth of daily readings, 365 short pieces, and with some of the concepts from Why Does He Do That and a lot of new concepts. The main goal with that book, with the daily wisdom for Why Does He Do That book, the new one, is to try to help women with managing how much chaos and stress an abusive partner creates. And by just having it be just one piece you read per day, you don't need a bunch of time, and it's something you can probably do even when he's creating a lot of stress, is still find a time just to read your one 5 or 10 minute reading for that day, right, and try to create a format for a woman to be able, over a period of a year, to really help herself heal and get clear from what her destructive partner is creating in her life. And so I hope it'll be a path to strength and freedom for her.
Right. Well, that's great. I mean, one of the questions that comes up over and over again is whether or not the men can actually change. And what are your thoughts on that as somebody who spent so much time with these men?
Well, he can change, but what ends up mattering much more in the life of a woman who has a destructive partner is, will he change? And we know that he won't change, for example, unless he completely admits to all the things that he's done. That if he's continuing to deny a lot of the ways that he has torn her down, or the ways that he's been violent, or the ways that he bullied her about sex, if he's still denying part or all of what he did, he's not going to change. And he's not going to change by some sort of overnight realization that what he's done was bad and that he doesn't want to be that way anymore. That kind of epiphany change never goes anywhere. And he's not going to change if he's still also abusing alcohol, and he's not going to change if he's still finding different ways to make everything her fault. In other words, the change only comes if he starts to really take her seriously and respect her. And what I hear just so many times, more times than I could possibly count, in the stories of abused women, is these times when the guy says, "Oh, I feel so bad. Oh, I realize what a jerk I've been, and I'm just, I'm going to treat you really good from now on," and that never goes anywhere. I mean, that unfortunately, I can tell you, never goes anywhere. Right. And the only thing that does go anywhere is deciding to get really serious about, I've got a real problem here. I've had real issues for a long time in how I've been behaving. I have to really look at this. And then, more importantly, sticking with it for a long time, 2 to 3 years. Okay. Of working really, really hard on himself. So if she thinks, a few months have gone by and he's so changed, unfortunately, it doesn't mean anything. Right. And women struggle a lot with the question of, well, does he mean it when he says he's sorry? I have trouble telling if he's apologizing, but I have trouble telling whether he's sincere or not, whether he really means it. And it doesn't make any difference. This is what I'm eager for people who are in these kinds of relationships to understand, is it's not even worth putting a bunch of energy in trying to figure out, does he mean the apology or not? Because the really sincere apologies and the fakey apologies are worth exactly the same amount. They both go to the same place. They both go nowhere. And the only thing that matters is, does he really get down to doing the work? And unfortunately, most abusive guys don't really get down to doing the work.
Right. So if a woman's trying to figure this out, you're saying, kind of, from what I'm hearing, is you're saying the difference really is not just apologizing or saying, I'm going to turn this around, or being really sweet. They need to really look inward and say, and take responsibility. This is what I did. I was a jerk. I need help. More about almost themselves, which is the opposite of what you would think, because usually you're hoping that they focus on you, but really they need to be culpable and demonstrate, forget about the words. They need to take the action to do that work.
That's exactly right. There's got to be a whole bunch of action over a substantial period of time that backs up the words. There is some sense where it is about focusing on her, in the sense that abuse has its roots to a great extent in selfishness.
Mm-hmm.
Abusers are very selfish in their relationships, and so one of the signs of change, or one of the steps in change, is that he does have to become focused on being much more generous and giving with her. Mm-hmm. But again, it only matters if he gets consistent about it. For an abuser to have sort of a period when he's really generous and focused on doing things for her, that's no different from how he always is. Like, I'm sure at the beginning of the relationship he went through a period when he was super focused on doing things for her. I mean, all abusers have these phases when they're really doing things for her, and it doesn't mean anything. So again, but does he get consistent about it? Does he stick with it? Does he start to actually feel like what she needs is just as important as what he needs? And that's where these guys tend to fall down. Pretty soon they're back to like, no, it's what I want for me.
Right. That makes sense. So I guess the other big thing is, most of the women that I've spoken to through the support groups that I'm in, one of the big questions they have is, now that some of them are getting out or are out, they're just completely distrusting of their own instincts. And they're, the recurring thing that you read is that once you've been abused, you're, whatever the percentage is, more likely that you'll end up in another relationship like that. So what kind of things should a woman be looking for in a man? Like, what are the red flags right away? Or are they so good that you don't see them?
So let me answer that in two pieces. First of all, the notion that once a woman has been abused, she's more vulnerable to be abused again in the next relationship, that's true if she doesn't process what has happened to her in the first abusive relationship.
Okay.
If she processes what happened to her in the first abusive relationship, she's actually less vulnerable than someone who hasn't been abused, because she's learned a bunch.
Okay.
So she's more vulnerable if she's still feeling terribly wounded and in shock and not trusting herself and very, very needy of positive attention because of how much she's torn down by the person she was with. So one of the really important things coming off an abusive relationship is, don't get involved with someone right away.
Right.
And that's very hard to do, because in some ways, the more you've been torn down in your last relationship, the more hungry you are for someone to be kind towards you and loving and sexy and attentive. But it's a mistake, because getting in a relationship quickly after you've come out of an abusive relationship, then you are really likely to end up with another abusive guy. Whereas if you take time and allow yourself to heal and allow yourself to think through and learn from what's just happened, then actually you'll be really well. And you can heal. You can heal from what he's. That's one of the key messages, is you can heal from what he's done. And if you give yourself a chance to heal from what he's done, then you'll go into your next relationship with your eyes wide open and not be likely to end up with a guy like that. In other words, I talk to a lot of women whose next relationship is a really good one, but it's because they went in carefully. So that's sort of part one. And then part two is, are there things to watch out for? Absolutely. And are some of these guys very slick and good at hiding their issues, as you're saying? Yes, but when you know what to watch out for, it's hard, and even for the pretty slick guys. Some of the key things to watch out for is, first of all, really watch out for a guy who's controlling. Like in a relationship, that can be kind of flattering. Like, wow, he's such a take charge kind of guy, and he knows what he wants to do, and he bought us tickets for this, and he took us here, and he took us there. But pay very careful attention to the question of, does he care what you want? If you don't want to do what he planned, does he then get all angry and say, oh, God, I planned this nice evening for us, and that's all the thanks I get? Rather, I'm sorry, I didn't really think about what you might want to do tonight. I got so caught up in what I wanted to do tonight, which would be a much more appropriate way of responding. So really watch out about control, no matter what the excuse is for it. That's another really important point. That he'll have good excuses for why he got controlling, and they're not good enough. Really watch out for jealousy, and this is a message I particularly like to emphasize with younger women, because younger women often find jealousy very flattering. Like, wow, I've had a guy so crazy about me. He's just crazy about me. And jealousy is actually one of the top signs of abuse. It's not a sign of somebody who loves you. In other words, someone who's wicked jealous with you does not love you a drop more than someone who's not. That's a myth that jealousy is. And he'll say, oh, I'm so jealous because I'm so crazy about you. It's like, not true, not true. He's so jealous because he's a possessive guy. Watch out for possessive. It's really bad news. Watch out for selfishness in general. A guy who's like, needs are just constantly coming ahead of yours. Really watch out for disrespect, because what looks like love can come in a package that's actually not really respectful. And again, if it's not respectful, then it's not real love. So you say, well, he's crazy about me. Well, then I always want to ask her when she says he's crazy about me, yeah, but does he respect you? Is he interested in your opinions? Is he interested in your tastes? Is he interested in learning, for example, what kind of music you like? Or is he just interested in you got to like the kind of music he likes? Or is he interested in your friendships, or is he just sort of critical of your friendships? Next, watch out for being cut off from other people. If he starts to be really negative about your friends or negative about your relatives, and he may say it's for your own good. It's like, oh, those people aren't good to you, or those people aren't, you're too good for the people you're hanging out with, or whatever excuses he has. So watch about getting cut off from other people. And then really see how he handles sexuality. And some abusers are, at least in the early stage of relationships, okay around sex, but just watch it carefully. Like, does he pressure you into things sexually that you really didn't want, press you into being sexual too soon, or does he do the opposite and just not take much sexual interest in you and be kind of flirtatious with other women a lot and make you feel kind of off balance? Like a lot of guys play a lot with a lot of attentions to other women that sort of always make you feel a little one down, a little off balance. So yeah, if you keep an eye out for those things, the great majority of abusive men will reveal themselves accidentally as bad news early in the relationship. But then the other message I want to say is those warning signs, those like red lights, don't do you any good if you run the red light.
Right.
So
okay.
if these warning signs to be helpful, you then have to be prepared to step back, not necessarily completely out of the relationship, but you got to be, when you see these things, you got to be willing to step back, see the person less, get into less intimacy and less intensity, and then see if how he responds to that, and see if it's going to change. And if this stuff persists, you've got to be willing to stop seeing the person.
Right.
One more thing I should say to all this, I'm saying he, but if you're a woman that goes out with women, watch for the same stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
Same warning signs, because you can be torn down by your female partner too.
Well, and one of the things about the stepping back that I want to mention is that I think oftentimes when these guys look so charming, or these women look so charming to their new partner, the family buys into this idea. And so even though there's a little inner flag, light, whatever you want to call it, going off inside the person who might be victimized, the family pressures them to stick with this seemingly good guy or good gal. So that takes a little bit of, you just have to know that it's about you, not your family. So if you feel that, that something might not be quite right, that you need to just stick to your guns and not listen to your family's pressure because you need to get married or have a baby or do this or that. Because that's definitely come up where people have felt something and even shared it with a family member. And the family member's like, well, he's a good guy. Look, he's got this, and this.
I've talked to a number of women, for example, who were engaged and knew before they got married that this was a mistake.
Right, exactly.
On some level, they could feel it inside. And they've told me that they could tell ahead of time that it was a mistake. And they, by that time, they just felt like, well, I can't call the wedding off. I've got to go through with this. By the way, a young relative of mine recently did just call off a wedding, and I haven't really heard the story of why it happened, but I wonder, I'm sort of suspicious that some warning signs emerged. And then related also to what you just said is that when you're first crazy about the guy, you're of course going around telling everybody, oh my God, he's awesome. I've met such a cool guy and all this stuff.
Right.
So then your own embarrassment becomes a factor also
Sure.
when you start to realize there's some trouble there. It's like, oh God, it's so embarrassing. I've been running around telling everybody how crazy I am about this guy, and then it turns out he's got some pretty serious issues in how he's behaving. And that's understandably hard, but it just kind of deal with it. To deal with the embarrassment, don't let that stop you, because it's a little bit of embarrassment versus years of dealing with an unhealthy partner. It's just not a good trade.
Yeah, not at all. No, exactly. Can't emphasize that one enough. So thank you for that. And this is all good news, especially the part about healing. Being able to take that time to actually heal can prevent you from ending up in one of these relationships again. I think that that's a really big message and a very positive one for anyone listening. So the other question...
Can I add one more thing there quickly,
yes,
Stephanie?
Mm-hmm.
That's another time in life when his voice can be, even when you're not with him anymore,
Totally. Mm-hmm.
his voice in your head can be really powerful. So his voice saying, no one's going to want you, and you're fat, and you're ugly, or if you have children, he'll be like, oh, no one's going to get involved with you when you've got kids. And so his voice in your head is one of the things that can pressure you in a way to jump into a relationship too soon to prove him wrong. Mm-hmm. So it's just another thing to be aware of. Like, don't let his, after you've broken up with him, try not to let his voice still active in your head press you in directions that aren't good for you.
Yeah, and I guess that leads me to another question I had actually about that voice that stays in your head sometimes. What do you recommend to people getting out of these relationships? What can they do to kind of remove that cognitive mental hold that's there from years and years of being with this person? I mean, because you can get away, but sometimes that voice and that fear and all the things that come along with it, they haunt you. What do you recommend?
Yeah, and they really can. They really can haunt. And so one thing I recommend is to put a lot of emphasis on having healthy, good relationships with your friends and with your healthiest relatives. And building good relationships. Don't get too focused on finding a new partner, as I'm saying, and instead really focus on how can I make my other kinds of relationships as healthy as possible. And through that, you will, that leads to other kinds of love. We tend as a society to put too much emphasis on romantic love and undervalue the love that we're getting from our friends and relatives and people that who are in our activities or at our workplaces and so forth. And love is a very healing force. So make your friends a high priority, make your sisters and brothers, if they're good people, a high priority, and put a lot of work into your other relationships. Don't just emphasize partner relationships. And think of other relationships as also deserving attention and effort and work and time. Another really powerful healing force is to join a support group for abused women. And women who are out of the relationship don't do that nearly as much as I wish they would. Think, oh, well, that's for people who are still with the guy or who are scared of the guy and they're trying to be safe or whatever, but I'm done with him and he's out of my life and I'm just left wounded by what he did. It's like, actually a support group is still very, very powerful, even if you're out of this relationship. And then the last thing I would say is that healing from an abusive relationship is like all kinds of healing in life, and that means that your things are going to go best for you if you do some searching for a healing path and find one that fits you and works well for you. I think we all need a healing path because we've all been through really difficult and injurious things in our lives as children, as young adults, as full-on adults, whatever stage in life, as old people. I mean, everyone's is carrying wounds because of the craziness of the world we live in. And so everyone really needs to find a healing path. And I find that people who succeed in finding a healing path, their lives go noticeably better than people who don't. And you have to find something that fits you. Like nowadays, everyone says, well, you should go see a therapist. You should go see a therapist. Well, that actually only fits some people that go sit and talk to a therapist thing. Some people find that quite healing. A lot of people, and this is in the research too, don't find it particularly healing. It depends on who you are. There are other kinds of professional healing modalities. In other words, there are people who do interesting kinds of blends nowadays of what's body work and emotional healing work. So there are all these more physical modalities. But there's things that don't have anything to do with paying money to a therapist. Like some people find that getting on a spiritual path is very powerful for them. Other people find that yoga or meditation is very powerful for them. Other people find that nature is their key healing force. What they really need is to spend much more of their time out hiking or camping or canoeing or just being in beautiful places. And there are, I think, in truth, there are really almost as many healing paths as there are people. So I encourage women who've been in a destructive relationship to go try stuff out, and don't assume that what's worked for someone else will work for you, and don't assume that what doesn't work for someone else is necessarily bad. It might be really worth trying. Find the path that works for you, and then make it part of your regular life, like for years, like, or even forever. Like this is going to be my road to healing, not just from this, but from all of life's challenges.
I like that. That's great. I have one last question for you. So one of the questions that came up, this is kind of a joke, the observation that in these groups that I'm in, that some of the things that one woman would hear that another woman would share is an identical thing in terms of exactly hearing the words, the phrases, the behaviors that came from that other person's husband or partner. And so there's a joke is, well, did they all go to the same training across the nation for abuse tactics? Like, why do they all seem to do the same thing? Why
sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, it can really start to feel that way. Like they all came out of Abuser Academy.
Exactly.
And I think there are a few reasons why there end up being so many similarities. And I hear the same thing, by the way. Women will one of my books and say, "You must have been in my house. Like you heard exactly what he said."
Right.
And so, first of all, the abusiveness is, in a sense, a culture. Like an anthropologist could study it. It's a culture, and abusers speak to each other. They barely even notice that they're doing it. It's almost automatic and unconscious to them, but they recognize each other. They feel comfortable with each other. They don't think of themselves as abusers, and they don't think of the other person as an abuser when they're making those abuser to abuser connections. But it's just much more just a sense of familiarity, of similar attitudes, of similar ways of blaming women for everything, and of looking down on women. They find their common ground and they recognize each other. And there are a lot of messages in popular movies, in popular songs, in popular music videos, just all through our culture, that are really put out there by abusers, and abusers are talking to each other through them. Again, without really meaning. I don't mean to make this sound like some sort of like conspiracy or plot. It's just people on automatic doing what comes naturally to them. It just happens. Very unhealthy what comes naturally to them.
Right.
So, for example, the most watched music video of 2011 was Eminem and Rihanna's Love the Way You Lie. That was a 5-minute promotional video for domestic violence. And I don't mean for curing domestic violence. I mean, it was a promotional video for doing domestic violence. And so abusers pick this stuff up. Or someone who's starting to be an abuser picks this stuff up. He learns it from his own dad or stepdad, then he sees it in the movies, then he sees it on Eminem's video, then he reads it in pornography. And so they're actually literally learning the tactics. And they're learning often the precise phrases, the ways of putting women down, the ways of controlling women, the ways of disrespecting women are often literally getting passed down through the generations. And now they're getting passed also around through the internet and movies. We've had times when I was working in batterer programs when we would go through a 2-year period when a behavior we'd never heard of before. Well, I'll give you an example of one that happened. Suddenly, over a period of 2 years, 8 or 10 of our clients ended up telling stories where they admitted to having thrown the toaster at the woman. And we thought, why is suddenly during this 2-year period we're hearing all these stories about the toaster being thrown at a woman? And eventually we were able to track it down to a very popular movie. A movie that was popular during those 2 years where the guy had thrown the toaster at the woman. So like abusers get ideas from what other abusive men do. So it's a lot of different reasons, in a sense, why they're so similar in their techniques and their attitudes and even, as you say, the actual words they use, the actual statements.
Right.
One thing that's a little sad, but it is, again, something that can be addressed, so I want to draw folks' attention to it, is that means that your boys are learning this stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
From your partner. And that means that you have to really figure out ways to then help your boys unlearn.
Well, that was going to be my next question, is what are the things that mothers can do to mitigate some of that impact from an abusive partner?
The main thing that moms need to do is really difficult to do, but it really, really needs to be done, which is that you need to find ways to have conversations with your kids about what's going on, about the abuse, to talk to them about the things that they've seen and heard, but also to give them some information, not an overwhelming amount of information, but some information about the things that they have not seen. They need to know they need a lot of help processing the things that they were there for, but they also need some help. They need some of the knowledge and insight that comes from understanding some of the things they did not see. And they really need good men in their lives. This is, again, assuming that the abuser is a male, since he usually is. They really need men in their lives. And it's not just boys, by the way. Girls also need good men in their lives, because girls need to learn good expectations. Like if a girl grows up only around rotten adult males, then that's all she knows to expect. That's all she knows to demand. Whereas if she's got some really good men in her life when she's growing up, then she expects guys to be decent guys. So she knows they could be. Right. And so if she's got a brother who's a really good guy, or she's got friends who are really good guys, to try to help those people make connections to her kids. And certainly in some ways, especially her boys, but not just her boys. Her girls really need it too. And then I think I don't think it's good for kids to know too much about their mom's suffering, but it is very helpful for them to know quite a bit about her healing, because that's so upbeat and hopeful. So as she is feeling better, that's a really good thing to share with her kids, but also creates a context to talk some about some of what went wrong. Right. And it's much easier for kids to hear about what went wrong when they can see that mom is doing a lot better, because then it doesn't weigh them down nearly as much as it does hearing about what went wrong when she's still obviously really, really thrashed from what happened. So as she gets stronger and more solid and back in herself and is really returning to who she really is, that's a great time to also share more with them about some of what went wrong and some of how she managed to get so strong again.
That's great. Yeah, that's excellent. And so your new book is really focused on little nuggets each day to help build her up and get her to that better place, whether she's in or out or regardless.
And a lot of the points being the kinds of concepts that we've talked about today, but I've probably talked about 15 different things today, and in the book you're just dealing with one a day, and so you don't get overwhelmed by it, and you can just sort of focus on digesting that one piece and working it into your life, and then move on to the next one.
Right. So I guess she might need to just hide that book, though, right? Put a different cover.
I'm amazed that how women get away with reading these my books and other books in the field. It takes quite a bit of creativity and ingenuity, and my books tend to have these really bright colored covers, which is not ideal. And so somebody was saying to me the other day that they wish my books came with like that free for the price of the book, you also got like fake cover that just slipped over the book. It would be something else, a book on cooking.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Cooking or exercise.
Badminton, something, who knows. But women hide them under the mattress. I probably shouldn't say too much about what they do with them, because in case the wrong people are listening. But
right. No, exactly.
But it's through amazing ingenuity, women find their way to read it, which I really appreciate. What goes into even just accomplishing that is already an accomplishment. But people find a way to do it.
Exactly. I know, it's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time and for your amazing books that have helped so many women, and all the work that you're continuing to do. It's you're a great voice, and we need to hear it. And this has been really inspiring and incredibly helpful with all your strategies. So looking forward to sharing this one with my audience. And
thank you. I feel blessed to get to be part of this work and spreading the word on these subjects. And thank you for doing the podcast that you're doing. I think it's a really important contribution.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lundy. All right. Well, you have a fantastic day.
You too.
Get 3 key things that will help you begin healing from abuse. Download them for free at theaudaciouslife.com. Steph welcomes you to join her social circle on Twitter at @TheAudaciousLife, Facebook.com/TheAudaciousLife. The Audacious Life. Find peace and break free.